Deathstroke is a Viking working as a mercenary for Savage, but what will he do when the world is frozen over and the Allwinter begins? Welcome to the Comicstorian Full Story channel, where we take old and new full stories from Comicstorian and put them here to give you a better viewing experience. In 2021, Tom Taylor gave us the Elseworlds story known as Dark Knights of Steel, which showed us a Game of Thrones-style DC universe. The story was so popular that additional comics were written in this alternate universe, including today's story of Deathstroke as a Viking mercenary fighting to end the Allwinter. This is Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter, issues 1 through 6 by Kristoff and Tom Taylor. I hope you enjoy. The gray landscape of the frozen north stretches out. The Allwinter is upon us, and snow billows from a colorless sky. Two armies roar and meet in battle. Footsteps crunch against the snow as swords and axes cleave into enemies. Blood falls freely, but it is just as colorless as the world around them. Upon a hill, the Jarl, known as Black Mask, watches his warriors fight. But elsewhere, an arrow is fired from a powerful crossbow. The arrow bounces through the battlefield, pinging off of shields, axes, and helms, until it finally finds its mark. Black Mask doesn't even see his death coming before it meets him. He falls from his horse swiftly, collapsing into the frosty wasteland. On a nearby hill, the warrior, known as Deathstroke, lowers his crossbow and turns away, grunting at Jarl Vandal Savage as he moves back towards his horse. 2 decades have gone, and your aim is keen as ever, Slade, Savage says with a smile. The Jarl turns back to the battle. His smile grows as Black Mask's warriors realize their leader is dead and turn to run. Slade pays the battle no mind as he loads his weapon onto his horse and mounts the beast. "I'm off to find a bath," he grunts as he rides away, ignoring Savage's call for his warriors to slay the opposing army before they can flee. That night, snow continues to fall from the sky on the rooftops of Agium, home of the Vandal clan. The mead hall is bright with a colorless fire burning in the hearth. Warriors cheer as Jarl Savage steps forward, holding his hands for quiet. "Brothers and sisters, for 21 years has the Allwinter lain thick upon these lands. But while some have withered in the chill since the Old Kingdom fell, we have prospered," Savage calls. The cheers ring louder as he raises his drinking horn. "For blood and honor!" Savage cries. Though the merrymaking is infectious, one warrior sits quietly in the shadows of the mead hall. Slade Wilson looks out of his one good eye. But he is joined by Savage and his second, the woman known as Killer Frost. "The victory is yours as well, old man. Will you not drink with us?" Savage asks as he offers Slade a horn of mead. But the old assassin shakes his head and pulls out his own flask. "I brought my own," he says as he takes a swig. With his thirst slaked, Slade requests the rest of the coin he is owed for Black Mask's death. Savage smiles and motions to the door. "Walk with me," he says. He leads Slade out to a balcony and motions to the city below them. Waving his hand, he explains to Slade that the Vandal clan has the makings of an empire. One forged in the frozen blood of the Old Kingdom and the fire of constant war, Savage explains. But Slade shakes his head. "War never gives, Jarl Vander. It only takes," Slade reminds him, once again asking for his payment. Savage smiles. "Is that all Deathstroke lives for now? The clink of a coin in his purse?" Savage asks. He looks back over his snow-covered city and makes Slade an offer. "What would you say if I asked you to capture a monster for me? A Draugr from the pits of hell who means to unmake all that I have made?" Savage asks. Slade ponders it for a moment before taking another swig from his flask. He finally turns his one-eyed gaze to the Jarl. "I'd say, how much?" he growls. And so, a bargain is struck, and Deathstroke sets out under the protection of Jarl Savage's warriors and longships, accompanied by Caitlin, also known as Killer Frost. The longships push through the colorless waves of the coast, heading for a distant land. Slade glances down at the dark shades of gray that break against the ship's hull. "You know, these oceans used to be blue once. Blue as a babe's eyes," Slade growls to Frost. She smiles as she continues to row. "I'll take you at your word. Somewhat before my time," she reminds him. Suddenly, the lookout calls a warning, bellowing that they are heading for rocks in the water, but Slade stands up. "There are no rocks out here," he mutters. The surface of the water suddenly churns as a massive monster rears up, its maw opening wide as it lets out a hungry roar at its captured prey. The Kraken slams down onto one of the longships, smashing it to tinder and sending the crew into the gray ocean. Killer Frost stands and calls upon her power, sending shards of deadly ice slashing into the creature, but having little to no effect on it. The creature turns its gaze upon her, and Frost's hand falls to her side. "Gods below," she whispers as death rears towards her. But Slade takes another swig from his flask before standing. He hefts 2 axes in his hands and charges forward, pushing past Frost and leaping into the air with a bellow of rage. But the Kraken meets him and swallows him whole. The warriors all stare in shock as the monster disappears beneath the waves and the ocean becomes calm once more. "Gods, it swallowed him! The Deathstroke slain!" the warriors whisper. Frost shakes her head. "I warned Vander that he should have hired the other one," she sighs. But the water breaks again as the Kraken returns to the surface. But now, it's not moving. The warriors all watch as the monster's skin begins to pulse, and suddenly, an axe rips through from the inside. Slade rips his way free from the monster's guts, his body steaming from the bloody entrails as it meets the frigid air. "I need another bath," he grumbles. 6 days later, the warriors have reached their destination, the city of Dodsriv on the Isle of Sikkim. Accompanied by Killer Frost, Deathstroke slips inside a temple and hides in the shadows, the warriors stationed nearby. "Remember, strike hard and swiftly. The beast will ensorcel you if it can," Frost whispers over his shoulder. "Never saw a spell that an axe to the face couldn't end," Slade grunts. He holds up a hand as cloaked figures begin to approach. Slade leaps from the shadows with a war cry as Frost lashes out with her wintry powers, dropping 2 of the cloaked figures with shards of ice. The cloaked figures draw their weapons and meet the attack, but Slade moves among them quickly, his axe slashing through his foes as he blocks and ducks beneath their attacks. But a woman protects a small cloaked figure. "Adeline!" the child yells. Slade suddenly whirls at the name. "Addie?" he whispers as he pulls off his helmet. Frost lashes out, stabbing through Adeline with an icy shard. The woman falls to her knees as Killer Frost steps forward. "Stop! You have no idea what you're doing!" Adeline begs, but Frost shakes her head and smiles. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she says. She prepares to make a killing strike, but an axe spins through the air and embeds itself in her shoulder. Frost lets out a scream of pain as she falls to the floor. She turns back to see Slade stalking forward. "What madness is this?" she demands. Slade raises his weapon as he steps between Adeline, her young charge, and Frost. That's my wife you just shot, Caitlin, he growls. Two warriors help Frost to her feet. Honorless old dog, Savage will have your head for this betrayal, she snaps. Slade nods and pulls off his money pouch, throwing it at her feet. Here's his coin back. If Savage weighs our debt heavier, he can come find me. Before this old dog really shows his teeth, he growls. Caitlin glares at him as she and her warriors flee. A moment of calm falls over the temple, and Slade turns back to Adeline and her charge. Been a long time, Adeline, he says softly, but she glares at him. Not long enough, she snaps. Slade steps forward, but the young charge moves to stop him. You're no beast. You're a boy, Slade notes as he reaches down and pulls away the cloak. His eyes widened in shock. The boy stands ready to fight, but that is not what surprises Slade. In this world of endless gray, black, and white of the Allwinter, the boy stands in stark contrast, for he is made of wondrous color, bright green, golden yellow, and the warm color of his skin that the far north has not seen in 21 years. Slade is still stunned by the boy, but they both turn as Adeline collapses from her wounds. The boy rushes to her side, and where he touches her, color returns to her body, as if the boy is able to chase away the endless gray of the Allwinter. How the hell are you doing that? Slade whispers. The boy turns to him, holding up his hands that are now stained in a vibrant red. She's bleeding, the boy cries. Slade is snapped back to reality and moves forward, pushing the boy aside. Out of my way then, he growls. He holds up his ex-wife. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you, Addie, he whispers. She grits her teeth as he takes hold of the ice dagger. You're a lying bastard, Slade, she hisses. Slade nods. Yes I am, he agrees as he pulls the weapon free. The boy tears off some of the dead men's cloaks and hands it to him. Slade still stares at the bloody red color as he begins to dress Adeline's wounds, but the color quickly begins to fade from the cloth and his ex-wife. Later, Adeline awakens to find herself in a warm room at a local inn. Slade asleep in a chair nearby as the boy sleeps before the fire. She moves to check on the boy, whispering his name. Alec, she calls. Slade stirs in his chair. You look well, Adeline. Major blood loss and broken ribs notwithstanding, he whispers. She whirls and glares at him, but Slade merely questions what she has gotten involved in, motioning to the sleeping boy, who lays in stark contrast to the grayness of the room around them, and their own gray, white, and black tones. That is none of your concern, she snaps, but Slade shakes his head. He stands, the chair and his bones creaking with the movement. He reminds her that he was paid to hunt the boy, which makes it his concern. Their heated words awaken Alec, and he shifts. Alec, it's time for us to leave, Adeline tells him as she begins to dress. He looks at her with concern. But how will we reach Gillingham without anyone helping us? He questions. Slade looks at them in surprise, reminding them that 1,000 miles of deadlands and Draugr lay between them and the old capital. And you're in no shape to travel, he points out as Adeline winces in pain as she pulls on her clothes, and she glares at him. You picked a fine time to start giving a damn, considering you murdered our escort, she snaps. Slade glares back at her. I was doing my job, he snaps, but his features soften as he offers to help, holding out a hand, but Adeline slaps it away. If you think I'll let you endanger another child after what you did to our sons, you're more than a fool than I thought you were. Now get the hell away from me before I take your other eye, she hisses at him. A short time later, Slade watches from the inn window as Adeline and Alec ride off into the snowy forest. But he looks down at the flask in his hand, the loving inscription that Adeline had carved into it, glaring up at him. Slade sighs as he turns away. Days pass as Adeline and Alec ride through the frozen north, with the boy questioning why Jarl Vander would have sent assassins to kill him. Because you're going to save the world, child, Adeline promises him. They continue to ride forward until they reach the edge of a large forest. It looks dark in there, Addie, Alec whispers. Adeline smiles and slips off the horse. My youngest was frightened of the dark too, but I would tell him, when it grows darkest without, hunt for the fire within, she assures him. She pulls out her axe and begins to lead the horse through the forest, clearing a path with the axe as they move forward. What happened to your children? Alec finally asks her, but a voice calls out from the brush in an answer. The same that happens to all my father touches, boy. He destroyed them, Rose says as she steps out of the shadows. Adeline steps forward, raising her weapon and pulling free a second axe. Rose smiles as she draws her own weapon and shrugs off her cloak. Hello, Adeline. I fear you've not aged like wine in our years apart, but give me the boy and I'll allow you to keep withering, Rose calls. Adeline readies herself. You're working for Vander, just like your father. My father betrayed his Jarl, broke his contract. I am nothing like him, Rose growls. But Adeline shakes her head. You're taking Alec over my dead body, she snaps. Rose nods her head and smiles. Acceptable. Rose rushes forward and their blades meet. Adeline ducks under an attack and comes up swinging, slashing Rose across her armor. But Rose moves with the blow and punches Adeline hard enough to knock away her helm. She brings her axe down on the woman's hand, bringing forth a spurt of blood and a cry of pain. But suddenly, an axe comes whirling out of the woods. Rose turns quickly and knocks it away. She glares as Slade steps from the forest. Hello, pumpkin. Surprised to see me? Slade asks his daughter, but Rose shakes her head. I see the future, father. Nothing you do surprises me anymore. Rose snaps as she rushes forward, her shield slammed into Slade. He dodges another attack and hits her hard, knocking her back. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, daughter. Jarl Vander is a ruthless bastard, Slade says as he kicks her hard. The blow is powerful, and Rose is thrown back, landing hard against the branches of a fallen tree that stab through her chest. Slade stares at his daughter for a moment. Didn't see that coming, did you? He asks. He turns back to Adeline and Alec and offers her a hand up. Need a hand, love? He asks. Adeline glares at him, but accepts the offer. Suddenly, Rose is behind them, driving a fallen tree limb through Slade and into Adeline. Slade stares in shock as his former wife dies in his arms. They both fall to the floor, blood oozing around them, and Rose stands over her father, sword in hand. Slade rolls over, but Adeline is already dead on the ground. Rosie! Wait, Slade gasps, but no one is watching Alec, and tears spill from the boy's eyes as he looks at Adeline. His powers begin to glow, color washing off him in waves, spilling out into the world. You killed Addie, he whispers. No! He bellows with rage as he rises into the air, a shockwave of energy lashing out and throwing Rose away. As the energy flows away, Alec falls to the floor. The snow has melted away, and the full color has returned to a small portion of the world. Slade stares in shock for a moment. "Impressive, boy," he gasps before slipping into the darkness. Around them, the world slowly returns to the endless gray as Alec's power slips away, leaving him crouched on the ground, alone. The snow falls around him as Slade stands over the makeshift grave of Adeline, his ex-wife. His breath puffs out as he sighs deeply. "I'm sorry, Addie, for everything," Slade whispers. Memories of 21 years ago flash before his eyes, back when the world was full of color and the fire glowed warmly in the hearth. The sky crashes outside and Adeline comforts her young sons, promising them it's just thunder. But the door suddenly slams inward and Slade rushes into his home. "Adeline!" he shouts. He hurries across the room and leans over his wife and sons. "Addie, get your things. We need to leave. Now," Slade tells her, worry playing across his blood-splattered face. Adeline glares at her husband. "Slade, what have you done?" she demands. In the present day, the wind gusts, shifting Slade's fur cloak behind him. He sighs again and places the flask from Addie on her grave. "Farewell, love," he whispers. Finally, he turns and walks away into the storm, ignoring the sniffling boy he left behind. But he doesn't get far before he stops. Grunting to himself, Slade turns back and crosses to the boy, the only amount of color in a dreary world. "Come on, boy," Slade grunts as he holds out a hand. Alec looks at him in confusion. "Where are we going?" he asks. Slade shrugs. "Gillingham, I suppose. Mad as it might be to try and reach the old capital city, Addie was trying to get you there," Slade explains to him. Alec begins to argue, pointing out that Adeline is dead now, and Slade nods. "You want her death to be for nothing?" he asks. The boy hesitates for a moment before taking Slade's hand. The two saddle Slade's horse and begin their journey, riding through the frozen wastes of the gray north. 4 days pass with barely a word spoken between the two, but Slade finally asks, "You ever gonna tell me what the hell you are?" he grunts, asking why Adeline was even taking him to the old capital. The old horse begins to push across a rickety bridge that spans a frozen crack in the earth. The world disappears far below them, the ground lost to the hazy fog of the frost. "To save the world," Alec finally says. His eyes widen as he looks down at the immense drop. Slade grunts, but doesn't smile. "And how do you plan on doing that?" he asks, but Alec hangs his head. I don't know exactly," he whispers. Slade sighs, pointing out that between them and the capital are miles of deadlands, packed with the undead warriors known as Draugr. And beyond that is the Everstorm, an unholy tempest that no man has ever passed. Slade glances back at his young charge, pointing out that Savage would also be sending more assassins after him. "So, even if we do reach the Old Kingdom, you've no idea what to do when we get there?" Slade demands. And Alex shakes his head. "I only know what the green tells me," he whispers. Slade turns again. "The green? What the hell is that?" he asks. Alex shrugs, explaining that the green speaks to him in his sleep, and Slade stares at him in shock. "You're telling me that we're out in the frozen wastes of Yarland because of the voices in your head?" Slade demands, and Alec nods, a serious look overtaking his face. "The green told me about Victor, Slade, about what happened to your boys. The green said it's good you found me, that it's not too late to make all this right," Alec whispers. Slade pauses for a moment, and he finally slides off the horse and retrieves his axes. He turns to walk away. "When next you dream, tell this green to go f itself," Slade snaps. Alec turns the horse to follow Slade. "What about saving the world?" Alec asks. Slade whirls on him in anger. "I kill men for money, boy. I only stuck with you this far for Addie's sake. Do I look like a man who gives one drop of a f*** about this world?" Slade bellows. Suddenly, something falls from the sky, smashing through the wooden bridge and destroying it. The horse lets out a cry of fear as the bridge gives way beneath its hooves, and Slade and Alec plunge into the depths of the canyon. Below them, the object slams into the snow at the bottom, and Bruce gathers himself and stands, brushing the snow from his cloak. "Cal makes it look so easy. Oh, gods," he mutters. But he looks up as something approaches from above. "They're not gonna help you, boy," Slade bellows as he brings his axe down with his landing, smashing Bruce across the face and knocking his helmet away. Slade bats him with his shield, knocking him back. "I thought I knew every assassin, sellsword, and cutthroat in Yarland. Seems I hadn't met the sloppiest." Slade snaps as he brings the axe down again, but Bruce blocks the blow with his gauntlet and hits Slade hard enough to knock him through the air and send him through several trees. "Stop!" Bruce yells at him. Slade rolls to a stop, but merely spits out a drop of blood. "Let's try that again, eh, boy?" he growls as he gets to his feet. But Bruce draws his blade and the two meet in battle once more, trading blows back and forth. "How much do you charge to butcher children?" Slade snaps. But Bruce blocks another blow, and his eyes suddenly glow red, and Bruce hits Slade with a blast of heat vision. "Away from me, villain!" Bruce bellows. But Slade throws his burning shield away and continues to press his attack. Meanwhile, Alec lays in the snow nearby, but a voice speaks in his mind, awakening him. "Alec, awake," the green commands. Alec suddenly sits up, energy pouring off of him and interrupting the fight, sending both of the warriors flying. "God's below, boy! Stop doing that!" Slade snaps. Bruce looks around in shock. "What is this witchery?" he asks. The two prepare to continue their fight, but Alec orders them to stop, stepping between them as the energy radiates off of him. "Slade! Prince Bruce! Stop, please!" Alec begs. Slade shakes his head, pointing out that Yarland has no princes, and he looks to the young warrior. "Not from around here, then," Slade notes. Alec nods, revealing he knows more than he is saying. "Prince Bruce has come from very far away, Slade," Alec explains. "This fool damn near killed you, boy," Slade reminds him. Bruce shakes his head, apologizing for falling from the sky. "The sun gives me strength, my flight," Bruce says as he looks up at the hazy light in the air. "But here, it shines not as bright as in the kingdom of El," Bruce says. Slade shakes his head and grunts. "Kingdom of El? Never heard of it," he says, demanding to know why Bruce has come to the frozen lands. Bruce explains that things have been intense in his kingdom, and he sought to get away from it. Alec looks to the warriors, pointing out that Bruce can help them in their quest. "It's not too late, Slade. You can still make all this right," Alec tells him once again. Bruce continues to look around as the color seeps away and the grayness of the world returns once more. "Is this place under some spell?" he asks. Slade nods as he looks at the corpse of his horse. "You owe me a horse. Or, I suppose you can lend me your sword arm. Where we're going, we're gonna have a need for it," Slade tells him. Bruce stares at the two for a moment, but finally nods. "I'll trade you my blade for the tale of what's happening in this land," he says, holding out his hand. Slade stares for a moment before agreeing and accepting the handshake. The three gather their things and set out into the snowy morning. Behind them, in the place where the ground was cleared by battle, a plant begins to grow, reaching up, bright and green in a world of gray. As the trio continue on their quest, venturing into the snowy lands of Slenroslos, the frozen wastes where the dead of the old kingdom wander eternal, from the storms the Draugr came, their frozen, rotten corpses crunching through the snow at the warriors. The Prince of El fought with his sword. His strength allows the blade to slice through the monsters' bodies. Slade swung his axe, bringing down many of the undead, while Alec lights their way, a torch burning brightly in his hands. Bruce swings his blade again, but his blows have become weary. "Getting tired already, boy? Must say, they made kings of harder steel in my day," Slade calls out as he punches another Draugr in the head. Bruce whirls and fires a blast of heat vision that brings down several of the creatures. "I'm not a king, Slade," he growls as he whirls and slashes through two more monsters. The wave of undead seems endless, and the two push their backs against each other, covering the other. "What happened to the kings of old in this land?" Bruce asks when they get a moment to breathe. Slade sighs, explaining that long ago, before the Allwinter overtook them and cast the land in perpetual frozen gray, the lands were ruled by King Maxwell of the Clan Lord. He ruled from the capital and sat upon his throne, and the people loved their king. But there was one who grew discomfort under Maxwell's rule: the court magus, Victor. Victor served his king faithfully, however, despite his misgivings. But when Magus learned that his wife, the beautiful Lady Nora, was seeing the king behind his back, Victor grew angry. His vengeance was swift and terrible. Using his magic, Victor cursed the kingdom, both Maxwell and the people who adored him. The skies over the capital darkened, and strange lightning flashed through the sky. The curse washed over the kingdom, causing the endless winter to begin, and the land fell into eternal gray, as cold and empty as the halls of Victor's broken heart. As the battle ended, Bruce fell to his knees, breathing heavily. A tale of sorrow indeed. He gasps as he removes his helm and rests on his blade. Slade cocks an eyebrow at him. "Are you well? You fought me to a standstill not 5 days ago, and now you can barely stand?" he points out. Bruce nods. "The farther north we travel, the darker it grows," he gasps. Alec steps forward, his blonde hair blowing in the wind. "Prince Bruce, you're under no vow to come with us. You've already helped us so much," he says. But Bruce shakes his head and stands, lifting his sword and resting it on his shoulder. "Only a coward turns back when the road grows dark, Alec. Onward," he motions. Slade sighs and shakes his head. "Thinks he's a hero, this one," he whispers. And the trio continues onward, their boots crunching over the endless snow. So if this magus cursed the kingdom with this Allwinter, why has no one put an end to it? Bruce asks. Slade glances over his shoulder. "Those who didn't flee when the curse fell were consumed by it. The capital is surrounded now by the dead. An endless tempest no man nor sorcerer can pierce. The Everstorm," Slade growls. "Then how do you plan to pierce it?" he questions, but stumbles and falls to his knees in the snow. Alec turns back and shouts a warning as another horde of Draugr appears from the storm. "Gods, is there no end to these fiends?" Bruce asks as he draws his blade. A Draugr reaches for Alec, but Slade throws his axe, smashing the monster's face. Bruce whirls in the storm, but his speed and strength are waning, and one of the monsters grabs him by the throat, pressing a blade to his flesh. Blood begins to pour, but Slade rushes in, knocking the monsters away. In moments, the horde is dealt with, and Alec rushes to Bruce's side. "I'm all right, Alec. Give me a breather." Bruce gasps as the flow of blood begins to slow, but Slade shakes his head as he looks down at the prince. "You can't go on like this, boy. You've no skin in this game. Don't be a fool," Slade warns him. He explains that as they get closer, the Everstorm swallows what little bit of sunlight shines on this land, and that whatever strength Bruce draws from the sun will be completely gone. "And I'll not bury another on this road," Slade says. He turns away from the prince. "You're slowing us down. I can't watch out for the boy if I'm watching out for you. Whatever you're atoning for, whatever you're looking for, you'll not find it up here in the snows," Slade says. Alex steps forward. His torch is still burning brightly. "You've done enough, Prince Bruce. Truly, I'm in good hands," the boy says softly. Bruce nods and stands, and Slade offers him a hand. "In another life, another place, who knows what we might have been to each other. But in this one, I'm glad to have fought beside you for a time," Slade says. Bruce nods and takes his hand, shaking as warriors. "Farewell then. May you find what you're looking for too," Bruce calls before turning away. Lightning crashes in the distance as the trio separates, and Prince Bruce disappears into the night. And so, Slade and Alec continue onward, moving through the darkness and the snow, taking refuge when they can. Finally, they rest in an abandoned tower as the storm rages outside, getting more ferocious the closer they get to the center of the curse. "It's so loud out there," Alec whispers as he huddles closer to the fire. Slade nods as he turns the stick of meat that he is cooking. "We're getting closer to the capital now. Not sure what your green has planned here, but we'll not get through the Everstorm without a miracle, boy," Slade points out. Alec nods and looks sadly into the fire. "We used to get big storms back home too. Mama used to sing to me when it got loud out. Drown out the thunder," he says softly. Slade glances up at him. "Where's home then?" Slade asks, questioning what happened to the rest of Alec's people, to his parents. Another roar of thunder shakes the tower as Alec remembers. Raiders in black ships had come from the ocean, destroying his village and people, his parents. Alec had fled into the old swamp, which the elders proclaimed was cursed, but Alec discovered there were no evil spirits. He looked up at the ancient tree, a place of power. The spirit dwelling at the heart of the swamp was nothing close to evil. It was a guardian, a protector, who remembered this world when it was green and good, and it told me I could bring that world back," Alec whispered. Slade sighs and stands, stretching his muscles as he looks out the window at the endless night. "Still all sounds like bollocks to me," he grunts. Suddenly, the window shatters as a spear pierces through it, stabbing Slade through the chest. Alec tumbles to the ground in surprise, and the door creaks open as Rose steps in, followed by Caitlin. "Hello, Father," Rose says softly. "We meet again, old man," Caitlin says with an evil smile. Slade falls to his knees, blood puddling beneath him. "Rose, wait," he gasps. Lightning and thunder crash. Suddenly, the sky is illuminated, and another window shatters as Slade is thrown from the tower, plummeting into the inky darkness of the night. Meanwhile, the storm rages at the capital. Inside the once great castle, a massive man steps through the gray throne room, finding his ruler waiting on the balcony outside, watching the endless storm.
Master, 3 of the intruders have turned back south. The last is fallen, but perhaps not dead. Should I send more Draugr to end him?
Solomon asks. Victor glances over his shoulder, and he ponders for a moment before shaking his head. Nay, good Solomon, the storm is hungry. Let him freeze. Victor proclaims as the thunder and lightning crash overhead. Slade plummeted from the tower, wind and snow whipping around him until he slammed into the ground. A groan of pain escapes his aging body as he struggles to his feet. The Draugr close at his heels. Their shadows fall over him as he tries to stand and continue the fight. But suddenly, there is a sound of igniting flames, and an armored warrior stands over Slade and raises a strange weapon, shooting a jet of flames into the Draugr horde. The creatures make no sound as they collapse into a burning heap. My thanks, stranger, Slade gasps, still unable to stand. But there is a soft chuckle from the armored warrior. Stranger, it's been over 15 years. You look like the dog's breakfast next day, old friend. The warrior says as he removes his helmet and reaches out a hand to help his friend up. Wintergreen? Slade gasps in surprise. The old warrior nods and puts an arm around Slade's shoulder. Let's get you somewhere warm, he says. Later, Slade awakens in a bed. The air is warm around him as he looks up in surprise, and he finds himself in a vast cavern beneath the ground. Warmth generated from the earth below. Slade sits up and looks around as his friend, William Wintergreen, approaches with a bowl of stew. I've been digging for the last decade, Wintergreen notes, motioning around at the vast cavern and the steam pipes that bring the warmth around the chamber. He places the bowl of stew on a table and motions for Slade to join him. It's good to see you, William. It's been too long, Slade notes as he begins to eat. Wintergreen nods. Aye, well, that was your choice, not mine. How's the lovely Adeline? Wintergreen asks, but Slade lowers the stew. She's dead, he says sadly. Oh, my dear friend, I'm so sorry. He stands and peers around the chamber. You know, she worked down here with me for a time, but Adeline grew impatient in the end. She wanted to do more, Wintergreen says before turning a sad look to Slade. And I don't think she ever truly forgave me for my part in what happened, he explains. Slade looks around, asking what it is that Wintergreen has been working on. You're the greatest smith these Isles ever saw, but this is impressive even for you, Slade notes. Wintergreen motions for his friend to follow and leads him on a tour through the vast chambers and vaults. Inside his workshop, Slade marvels at the schematics that his old friend has drawn up. You've been busy. When we split 15 years back, you said you were going to look after Rose, Slade notes, an edging creeping into his voice. Such was my intent, and I did for a time, Wintergreen says softly, but Slade shakes his head. She's in the pay of Savage, William. She killed Adeline, Slade points out. Wintergreen whirls on him, anger flashing in his eyes. And you're blaming me? You're her bloody father. You wonder why she works for Savage? All Rose ever wanted was to be like you, Slade. All that girl ever needed was for you to be proud of her, Wintergreen snaps. Slade balls his fist, and for a brief moment, it looks as if words will turn to blows. But finally, he releases his anger and drops his head. Truth, Slade whispers. He looks around the small shop and picks up a book. More words than schematics. What's this? Slade asks. William glances at his friend. A history. I've been working on it for years.
It's the story of how we got here, the truth of what happened, our part in it, all of it,
William says. Memories of the past swirl through Slade's mind. The castle, him preparing his shot, but he slams the book down angrily.
Writing all that down doesn't change anything,
Slade growls. William shakes his head, explaining that the world deserves to know how it began, and how it will end.
And how will it end, William?
Slade asks.
Kill the Magus and the curse dies with him,
Wintergreen says matter-of-factly, but Slade points out that getting to the Magus is the problem. Wintergreen motions to the schematics of a great digging machine, and Slade's eyes widen in surprise and understanding.
You're not going through the Everstorm. You're going under it,
he whispers. Wintergreen nods and explains the plan quickly, using his machines to bring them through the earth and arrive at the capital, where they will hunt down and kill the Magus, thus ending the curse. But Slade shakes his head.
Not even I could stand up to Victor now, not in the heart of his kingdom. We need magic stronger than his,
Slade says softly, but a smile begins to play over his lips. Wintergreen notes it and raises an eyebrow.
Slade, you're smiling. It's bloody horrifying,
Wintergreen tells his friend. Later, on the edge of the Roslos, in a lakeside tower away from the wind and snow, Rose sits and tends a fire, trying to keep warmth around them, with Alex sleeping nearby. 3 days stuck in this accursed storm. Gods below, I'm so sick of being cold, she hisses. But Frost smiles and creates an icicle in her hand. Be of good cheer, Ravager. The hunt is gone and the quarry is ours. Rest easy, Frost tells her. But Rose suddenly stands. She senses something is coming. The roof above them suddenly explodes inward as Wintergreen slams into it in his armor, crashing hard against the ground and cracking the floor, throwing Rose away.
Apologies for the unannounced entrance, ladies, but I've some rather urgent business with this young man. Something about saving the world, I believe,
Wintergreen says as he crosses the room and lifts Alec into his arms. He turns his gaze upon the stunned Rose.
Hello, my dear. It's been a while. You look absolutely smashing,
Wintergreen notes. But a blast of ice slams into him from behind as Frost shouts for Rose to grab the boy. You must be a special kind of fool to walk in here alone, Frost snarls at Wintergreen. But Rose can sense what's coming. She shouts a warning, but she is too late. The crossbow bolt flies from above, piercing Frost through the eye and dropping her in a pool of blood. Rose draws her twin axes and prepares for a fight as Slade comes down into the tower.
Hello, pumpkin,
Slade says. Rose drops into a fighting stance, but her eye widens in surprise as Slade draws his axe and tosses it at her feet alongside a book. What the hell is this? Rose growls, but Slade holds out his hands, showing her peace and telling her that this is the truth. William removes his helmet and asks her to read it.
I wrote it for you after all,
he says softly. Rose still expects a trap, but slowly reaches out for the book. She opens it and begins to read. It was long ago that Savage paid for Slade and William to kill King Maxwell, but the pair of mercenaries had not expected the Bride of the Magus to be there for a secret meeting with the king. Slade had fired. It was an easy shot, but something had surprised the king and Nora, and they moved at the last moment. The arrow took her in the chest. The betrayal of his king and wife, and her death, were too much for Victor. He began to work his magic, and his curse fell over the land. Rose looks up at her father. You did this. The Allwinter. The fall of the kingdom. Your fault? She asks. Slade nods his head sadly.
Why do you think Adeline hated me?
Why the hell do you think I wanted you nowhere near me growing up? I'm a villain, Rose, he says softly. But Alex steps forward and finally speaks. You are, but some days, even villains get a chance to be heroes, he says. Slade holds out his hand, telling his daughter that they need her help to finish this, to finally kill Victor and end the curse. Rose looks from her father to Wintergreen. You were never there for me, never wanted me. If I do this, I need you to know that I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the man who raised me, she says as she turns her gaze back to William. Slade nods evenly. I don't give a damn who you do it for, Rose, so long as it's done, he says. A moment passes as she ponders this, but finally, she reaches out and shakes her father's hand, entering into the pact that will either kill them, save the world, or both. Acceptable, she says. 21 years ago in the capital, the snow had already begun to fall. The color drained from the world as the curse took hold. Slade rushed into his home, shouting for Adeline and the kids to gather their things. They needed to leave now. Slade, what have you done? Adeline hisses as she cowers with the boys. But Slade grabs her by the arm and leads them out into the streets. We need to go, now! He bellows as they rush into the night. Others are already running through the streets, screaming in fear. The present, the streets are silent. The homes are covered in ice as the endless winter continues. Suddenly, the ground begins to rumble, and Wintergreen's drill machine breaks through the hard-packed earth. The heroes all step out of the machine, Slade walking with purpose, with Alec on his shoulders. I feel like I've been here before, Alec whispers. Rose readies her axes. Her eyes dart around as she looks for the enemy. We should move, Father. We've surprise on our side, but not for long, she whispers. But it is too late, and Wintergreen motions to an alley where the darkness and ice have begun to move.
The enemy is upon us!
He shouts as they are suddenly surrounded by Draugr. Slade lets out a bellow of rage and rushes forward through the horde, slamming into the monsters and pushing them back, making a hole for the heroes to escape through.
Make for the castle! Go!
He shouts. The heroes push forward, finally reaching the bridge that leads into the castle. Wintergreen steps up, his flamethrower shooting out and clearing them a path, with Rose by his side, keeping the undead from attacking. Slade pushes inward. Alec is still on his shoulders as icy blood and skin cling to them. When finally they reach the courtyard, where they find the Magus' waiting soldiers.
The Deathstroke. I have heard tell of your legends, Greybeard. I look forward to carving my own on your skin.
Grundy bellows. He charges forward, but Wintergreen steps in the way, and the undead warrior slams into Wintergreen and sends him flying into the wall. Uncle William! Rose shouts. She rushes Grundy with her axe, but the mighty warrior bats her away.
The Master was expecting you, Slade.
Grundy chuckles as he stalks forward. Slade grunts and readies his axe.
I was expecting more, talking true,
he hisses. Slade rushes forward with a warrior's cry, his axe cleaving through the air and removing Grundy's head from his body. Slade pauses for a moment, wiping the blood from his face, but turns as he hears a voice he recognizes. Papa? 21 years ago, Slade was pulling his family through the streets. His sons cried as the magical storm began to thrash above them. The cold came quickly, transforming those in the streets into the Draugr. Slade drew his axe and begun to swing, slicing through the monsters and clearing them a path. He turns back for Adeline and reaches out a hand for her, but both parents' eyes widened in horror as they looked at their sons. Papa, help us, I'm so cold. The boys whisper as their skin darkens and cracks and their eyes turn white. The curse took them. The present. Slade stumbles at the sight of his sons. Grant, Joseph, my boys, he whispers. But Rose is there, raising her axe and preparing to strike swiftly. Abominations, she shouts, but Slade moves fast, blocking her blow with his own weapon. What the hell are you doing? These are your brothers, Slade shouts at her. But Rose shakes her head and glares at her father. They're not my brothers anymore, and they're not your sons. They're the enemy, she hisses at him. But Alec pushes between them, shouting for them to stop. But suddenly, there is a blast of frigid air, and the heroes are thrown away. Ice and wind fills the chamber as they all look up in shock as the Magus approaches on his icy throne. They played their best. Time for the curtain call, Victor says as he enters. Later, the heroes awaken in the throne room, trapped in pillars of ice. Where the throne once sat is a trapped Nora. Wake up, little man. Time to die, Victor calls to Slade. Deathstroke looks up with a smile. Hello, bastard, he gasps. Victor merely smiles and motions to his frozen wife. Long years have passed, little man, but you remember my lady wife, he says, placing a hand against the pillar of ice. Slade is shocked that Nora still lives, but Victor explains that he used powerful magic to stop her death. Magic that washed over the world. That's what this is all about. You froze a kingdom to death just to keep her alive. A woman who didn't even love you? Slade gasps. Victor whirls on him and points his wizard's staff at the warrior. My Nora loves me true, cur, as I love her, he hisses. Then why was she in the king's bedchamber that day? She was sleeping with Maxwell, you fool, Slade snaps back. But Victor merely smiles and tells Slade the truth. Long ago, King Maxwell did fancy Lady Nora, but she rebuked him. She went to his bedchambers so as not to humiliate him in public. When she pushed him away, the arrow killed them both. Victor stalks forward and jabs a finger in Slade's face. I slew a kingdom to spare Nora from death, but it was beyond even my power to give her life. And you were the one who took it from her. You took everything from me, little man, Victor snaps. He turns his anger upon Rose. So now I shall take it from you, he whispers. Rose looks up, still barely conscious. Father, she whispers. But Slade begins to shout as Victor places an icy knife against Rose's throat. No! Don't, you bastard! This is on me! My whole life, all I've done is destroy, and I've never made amends for any of it. So kill me, damn you! Kill me! Slade bellows. But a new voice calls as they enter the throne room. There will be no more killing today. Not if we can stop it, Adeline says as she enters the throne room. Prince Bruce at her side, his sword at the ready. Away from them, villain! Bruce shouts as he rushes forward, bringing his blade forward as Victor whirls and throws icy daggers at him. Adeline moves fast, breaking through the ice pillar that holds Slade. Addie, how the hell are you alive? Slade gasps. The woman shakes her head. I don't know. I remember Rose's blade. Blood, darkness, and then color, she says. Slade pulls himself free, shouting for his wife to get the others to safety. What are you going to do? She asks. Slade smiles as he reaches down for a large knife. What I do best, he tells her. Nearby, Victor whirls and hits Bruce with a blast of ice that throws him against the wall. You bring mere steel against the storm? I was magus to the greatest king these isles have ever seen! Victor shouts, but Slade is there, burying his knife into the magus's back. Never met a spell that a knife to the back couldn't end, he hisses. Slade backs away as Victor whirls in anger, but Bruce is back at his side. You stand not alone, friend Slade, Bruce tells him as he readies his sword.
Bloody well right he doesn't.
Wintergreen calls as he enters the chamber, Rose at his side. Slade nods as the group of heroes charge forward. Together then, he shouts. Meanwhile, Adeline is freeing Alec, who tells her that he finally knows what to do. Adeline whirls as Draugr begin to pour into the room. Her eyes widen in shock as she recognizes her sons. Gods, don't make me do this, she whispers as she readies her blade. The battle continues around them as Alec races across the throne room. The Green spoke to him. He knows what to do now. The heroes continue their battle against Victor. Their blades have little effect against the powerful wizard as he knocks them away. Adeline fights against the Draugr, trying desperately not to hurt her sons. Slade leaps forward, finally bringing Victor down and pinning him to the ground, and he raises his axe. Time to die, bastard, Slade hisses. But Alec has reached Nora's frozen tomb and places his hands against it. The power of the Green flows through him, and the ice begins to crack and melt. When it grows darkest without, hunt for the fire within, Alec whispers as his power spreads. The ice suddenly shatters, and the curse with it. Awake! Alec bellows as the others are thrown across the room. In moments, Victor is awakened by the sound of his wife's voice. He looks up to find her standing over him. Nora? He whispers as he reaches for her. She lifts him, and the two kiss. Around them, the world has returned to color. The ice has begun to melt as the sun shines once more. The endless clouds of magic have disappeared. Not that I'm complaining, but how the hell did you find us? Slade asks as he reaches down and helps Prince Bruce to his feet. I found Adeline after we parted. She knew the way to William's workshop, and your former bride can be forceful when she has need, Bruce tells him with a smile. Don't I know it? My thanks, Majesty, Slade says with a chuckle. My friends call me Bruce, the prince responds. Slade turns as Rose approaches him. You told Victor to take you instead. You offered to die for me, she says before hugging her father. But Slade turns as Adeline shouts for him, and he looks in shock as she hugs their sons, now human once more. Slade rushes forward and gathers his wife and sons in a massive hug, tears falling freely from his eye. Gods below, thank you, he whispers. Later, he finds Alec on the castle balcony, looking out over the capital, which has already returned to normal. How does it feel to save the world? Slade asks as he joins Alec. The young boy shrugs and smiles. I'm not sure we've saved it yet. Jarl Vander still stokes the fires of endless war. There's still so much yet to do, Alec says. Slade nods as he looks over the kingdom and puts a hand on the boy's shoulder. Aye, too much work for one man. What this place really needs is a king, Slade says with a smile. Alec nods while looking at the capital. Prince Bruce has his own kingdom to rule, Slade, Alec reminds him. But Slade smiles wider and looks down at the young hero. I wasn't talking about Prince Bruce, he whispers. And there you have it. That was Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. What did you guys think of today's story? This one was only just finished up on the main channel, but I wanted to get it up as a full story as quickly as I could, because I think it's great. But let me know what you thought down below. And as always, like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out a lot. I'm Dan at Comicstorian, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.